I remember the exact shade of the sky that day. A bruised gray, like storm clouds trying to swallow the sun, reflecting the way my chest felt when Isabella turned her back on me in front of everyone. The restaurant had been alive with laughter and clinking glasses, a symphony of casual celebration, and then there was her, smiling at everyone except me, draped in the kind of indifference that cuts deeper than cruelty. She didn't even look my way. Not once. Not when I tried to catch her eye, not when I stepped forward, voice trembling beneath the weight of everything unsaid. Her rejection wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was subtle, public, devastatingly precise. A brush of her hand against mine that felt like fire, a laugh shared with someone else that silenced the room in my mind. I walked out without a word. The cold air hit me like reality in its rawest form, and I let it. I let the humiliation seep into my bones and burn. Most people would have crumbled, but I found clarity in the ache. Pain, I realized, is just energy misplaced, and I was done letting it slip away. I started small. A consultancy, a side project, nights spent sketching plans on napkins in cafes that smelled like burnt coffee and ambition. Every rejection I'd suffered, every whispered dismissal of my worth became the mortar of the walls I was building. Isabella had her world, a world built on fleeting charm, laughter, and the safety of popularity. I built mine on quiet persistence, on vision that no one else could see yet. Months blurred into years. I became a man of precision. Deals that seemed impossible crystallized under my touch. My name, once a whisper, became a weight. And all the while, Isabella faded from my thoughts, not because I forgave her, but because I had no time for ghosts. She chased dreams that couldn't hold her, while I was shaping reality itself. I don't deny the part of me that still remembers the curve of her smile, the way her presence could silence a room before she spoke. But memory is a gentle trickster, and I learned to turn its power into something else, into drive, into steel, into empire. And yet, beneath it all, there's a quiet curiosity I don't admit, even to myself. Where is she now? What dreams did she swallow that left her hollow, and how badly does she wish to fill the void she created? Because the truth is, I still see her. Even in the abstract, even across the invisible distance between her chaos and my control. And I know that someday our paths will cross again. And when they do, it will be on terms she never imagined. For now, I keep building, keep moving, keep sharpening the edge of myself into something both formidable and inevitable. And in the quiet of the night, when the city lights stretch out like spilled gold below my apartment, I imagine her, smiling nervously, unsure, small. And I wonder if she remembers the boy she left behind, the one who refused to break. The boy is gone, but the man he became, he doesn't forgive easily. And he doesn't forget. The city never sleeps, but some nights feel like it's holding its breath, like it knows something is about to shift. I remember the first time I saw her again, though she didn't know I was watching. It was a Friday evening, and the skyline was molten gold, bleeding into violet as the sun surrendered. I had an appointment at a high-rise gallery, one of those spaces where ambition hangs on the walls and whispers in the hallways. The sort of place where people pretend to admire art but really just measure each other's worth. And there she was. Isabella, standing in the crowd, her laughter hollow this time, like someone trying to remember how it felt to be happy. The easy confidence she once wore like armor was cracked, frayed at the edges. Her hair caught the light, but the sparkle in her eyes, the one that had once ensnared me, was dulled, tired, restless. She had a date with mediocrity, and it had shown up in every line of her posture. I didn't approach her, not yet. I watched quietly from across the room like a painter assessing the canvas before the first stroke. She was with someone, a man who looked important in the shallow, showy way that mattered to her. But I could see it, the subtle tension in her gestures, the way she didn't quite fit. She was pretending to thrive, but she was, not anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had once rejected me for my lack of glitz, my inability to bend to her world of easy charm. Now she was drowning in it, and no one was rescuing her. I felt a flicker of something in my chest, a mix of triumph and something sharper, darker, and quieter. I left the gallery without making a move. Not yet. There was no rush. Power, I'd learned, is most potent when exercised with patience. Every empire needs time to settle, to solidify, to mature into something undeniable. And right now, I was ready to see her crumble, not out of spite, but because I wanted to witness the truth of what she had chosen. Over the next few weeks, the city became a stage. I heard whispers of her struggles through mutual acquaintances, faint rumors of projects gone wrong, relationships faltering, doors closed. She was chasing her past, clinging to the ghosts of mistakes she refused to own. And I, for the first time in years, allowed myself to imagine her seeking me, not as a boy she had once dismissed, but as a man she had underestimated. I walked through my empire like a conductor through a symphony. Every meeting, every deal, every handshake felt like a note, a deliberate sound in a song that only I could hear. And yet, beneath the rhythm of control, a single thought lingered. How far would she go? How much would she give up before she realized the man she had discarded was no longer waiting for apologies? I didn't want revenge. I wanted acknowledgement. And in the quiet of my apartment, high above the restless city, I let myself wonder about the moment when she would finally look at me and see, not the boy she rejected, not the man she had underestimated, but the force of someone who refused to break. That evening, as the city lights flickered like fireflies caught in a jar, I made a silent promise. When the time came, she would have no illusions left. She would confront the truth she had avoided for so long. And I would be ready. It started with an email. Nothing dramatic, no grand confession, no desperate plea, but the words carried weight. A professional inquiry, thinly veiled in formality, yet unmistakably hers. Isabella's name glimmered on the screen, a tiny spark that stirred the embers I'd thought long buried. I read it twice, then left it unopened for hours. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to assert dominance, to remind her who I had become. Another part, the quieter part that thrived on anticipation, whispered that timing was everything. She would come to me in her own way, when the cracks in her world were no longer patchable with charm or excuses. Days passed. She appeared at events, briefly, like a half-remembered melody. I saw the subtle desperation in her eyes, the hesitation before her smiles, the almost imperceptible longing in her gestures. She had built herself a mask, a carefully curated persona meant to show she was thriving, but the mask was fragile, and every interaction with me chipped it away. The first confrontation was accidental, or at least, she thought it was. I was hosting a small dinner for a few key partners in my latest project, a secluded rooftop overlooking the city lights that stretched like liquid gold. She arrived unannounced, under the guise of a networking event, yet the moment our eyes met, the pretense faltered. "Ethan," she said, her voice catching slightly, as if the name itself carried a weight she hadn't anticipated. I smiled, just slightly, enough to remind her I was the same boy she had dismissed, but tempered with the man she now had no right to underestimate. "Isabella," I replied evenly, "it's been a while." Her lips pressed into a line, eyes flickering with memories she couldn't hide. She spoke, but I barely heard the words because the truth was staring back at me in her hesitation. She had wanted this, whether consciously or not, and I would let her desire sit in the space between us, heavy and undeniable, until she understood the cost of her choices. The night stretched on, conversations weaving around us like smoke. I observed her as I once had, but now the dynamic had shifted. She was searching subtly for approval, for connection, for some anchor in a world that had become unsteady. I was steady. I was the anchor, and she knew it. I could almost taste the irony, how she had once laughed at my ambition, scoffed at my patience. Now, in the golden haze of city lights, she realized that the boy she abandoned had become something she might never fully reach, no matter how desperately she tried. And yet beneath the surface, a quiet pull remained. Not the old, naive longing, but a nuanced, dangerous curiosity. We were two people shaped by past decisions, by pride and pain, circling each other in a dance neither of us fully controlled. When she left that night, there was no apology, no confession, just a glance that lingered too long. And I knew that look, fleeting, fragile, potent, was the beginning. She was on the verge of reckoning with herself, and I would be there, calm, measured, waiting for her to arrive fully at the truth. Sometimes, I wonder if she even recognizes it yet, That the boy she once rejected is no longer hers to dismiss. That the man she now faces is everything she underestimated, and more. And the most intoxicating thought of all, that she's not just chasing what she lost, she might be chasing me. I noticed the first cracks in her composure long before she admitted them to anyone. Life has a way of stripping pretense away, revealing the raw edges we hide from the world. For Isabella, those edges were sharp now, and I watched them glint in the dim light of reality. It began subtly, an unexpected meeting in a quiet cafe downtown. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a coffee cup that trembled slightly, though she tried to mask it with a laugh. She was still beautiful, impossibly so, but there was a fragility beneath the surface that hadn't been there before, a tension in her shoulders, a shadow behind her eyes. I didn't know who else to reach out to, she said, almost whispering. Her voice was carefully modulated, but the strain leaked through. I studied her quietly, noting the slight hesitation before she looked away. Every gesture, every pause, told a story she wouldn't speak aloud. Deals gone wrong, alliances broken, a life built on borrowed dreams slowly crumbling. And yet, here she was, seeking me, not because she wanted comfort, but because she needed the one person who had once seen her fully, who had never bowed to her illusions. I can help, I said softly, almost casually. But it wasn't casual, it never was. You just have to be honest with yourself. Her gaze flicked up, startled. For a moment, the old spark, the one that had once held my heart in its grasp, surfaced, tangled with something else. Regret, longing, and a quiet desperation she couldn't quite name. I made mistakes, she admitted finally, voice breaking just enough to betray her pride. I thought I knew what I wanted. I was wrong. I didn't smile. Not yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of her admission, to taste the consequences of the choices she had made. But inside, beneath the quiet armor I wore, something stirred, a faint, hesitant echo of what had once drawn me to her. The city outside buzzed with indifferent energy, lights flickering in the dusk like fireflies trapped in glass. It was poetic in a way neither of us could ignore. Two people, fractured, circling each other in a world that had changed them both. I don't know if you can fix this, she said, almost to herself, eyes glistening. I don't even know if I can. You can, I replied slowly, leaning back in my chair. But it won't be easy, and it won't be because I want you to. It will be because you're ready to face the truth, finally. The weight of silence pressed between us, heavy and charged. I could see her fighting it, the desire to cling to the past and the fear of facing reality in equal measure. And somewhere in that tension, I realized that what had once been a simple story of rejection and ambition had evolved into something far more complicated. A reckoning of hearts and choices, of pride and power, of love tangled with inevitability. When she left that evening, the sky had deepened to indigo, the first stars flickering like distant promises. She walked away with a tentative step, as though she weren't sure if she belonged in her own life anymore. I watched her go, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. The faint ache of longing, tempered by the certainty that she had to arrive here on her own, without coercion, without rescue. The next time we meet, things will be different. The rules have changed. I am no longer the boy she dismissed. I am the man who built a life that commands attention, respect, and inevitability. And she is beginning to understand that some opportunities, once lost, are never given back. But the question lingers, like smoke curling in the night air. Will she reach for me, or simply watch as I remain untouchable, untamed, and finally, entirely mine to define? The city was alive with light, but it felt muted, as if the world had been narrowed down to the space between us. I hadn't expected her to arrive at this point, her own reckoning, but when she appeared that evening, I understood that the timing was finally hers, not mine. She stood across from me in the quiet courtyard of my office building, where lanterns glimmered like fragile stars. The golden light caught her hair, traced the lines of her face, softened the edges of the regret she carried. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't demanding. She was aware, fully aware. "Ethan," she said, voice steady now, but laced with a vulnerability that made my chest tighten. I held up a hand. "Don't!" One word. calm, unyielding, not out of cruelty, but because I wanted her to see clearly, not through the lens of desire or nostalgia, but through the truth she had avoided for so long. She nodded just slightly, the kind of gesture that carries 1,000 unspoken confessions. I failed, she admitted. I chased things that weren't real, and I left behind what mattered. And now? I asked, the question hanging between us like a thin wire straining under weight. Her eyes met mine fully this time, unflinching. Now, I have nothing left to hide. I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if you even want me. I let the silence stretch. The night held its breath. I thought of all the years I had poured into building my life, all the nights of quiet determination, all the moments I had refused to break. And yet, beneath it all, beneath the empire, the precision, the pride, there was a pulse, a subtle, quiet space reserved for her. I want truth, I said finally. Not apologies, not pity, not promises, truth. And I need to know that you're here, not because you're desperate, but because you've finally decided for yourself. Her lips trembled, the faintest curve of a smile breaking through. I am. She took a step closer, then another, until the distance between us was gone. I don't expect everything to be the same. I only want to be real, if you'll let me. I studied her, and for the first time in years, I let myself feel the weight of longing without bitterness. Desire, yes, but tempered with understanding. Pain, yes, but softened by growth. And finally, a quiet hope, fragile and luminous, that maybe we could exist not as the people we were, but as the people we had become. I reached out, letting my hand brush hers, not possessively, not with the old impatience, but gently, deliberately. She didn't pull away. And in that simple touch, the city around us seemed to pause, as though it recognized the gravity of the moment. You're not settling, I said softly. You're choosing. Yes, she whispered, choosing and accepting whatever comes. The night deepened around us, stars igniting one by one, reflections in her eyes dancing like fire. And I realized that some stories are never about revenge or regret. They are about recognition, of growth, of resilience, of the delicate, complicated beauty of human hearts. We stood there, neither fully claiming nor surrendering, but existing in a space that was ours alone. And in that space, I found something I had never admitted aloud. I wanted her. Not as a trophy, not as a victory, not as a shadow of the past, but as a partner in a life forged through fire, truth, and time. She smiled then, the kind of smile that makes all the small, silent struggles worth it. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe that some endings aren't final, they're beginnings in disguise. The city hummed below, indifferent and eternal. But up here, under the lanterns, in the golden quiet, we existed, flawed, scarred, and entirely alive. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like home.